All right. Well, thank you so much, Dana, for being with me today. I want to hear a little bit about you, where you live, your credentials, and why you chose to become a natural menopause expert and coach.
So, and I grew up in New York City, of all places, but I've been a licensed herbalist and acupuncturist in Oregon for 20 years. And I got into it because when I was young in my 20s, I got this terrible respiratory infection. It left me with a lingering cough for over a year. No doctor could get rid of it. I finally went to see an alternative medicine person and it was gone in 3 weeks. And little 20-year-old me got so excited about natural remedies. I went to school, I got a master's, I learned everything. I wanted to know, how does this work? And I was just discovering how else I could use these natural remedies when the first menopausal client I ever had walked into my office, right? And she had brain fog that was so bad. Like she didn't feel safe driving her kids to school. Her doctor had said, here are some antidepressants, but you just need to wait it out. Right. So she was desperate. And I gave her natural remedies, and in a few weeks, she was better. Like she was all the way better. And that was the moment when I decided, wow, women aren't getting this help anywhere else. This works so well. I'm going to dedicate my career to women's health and menopause.
Wow, what an amazing job and feeling like you can actually do something. I mean, of course, there's
Mhm.
room for Western and Eastern medicine at the same time.
Yes,
I'm a big proponent on both. I mean, if you need a surgery, you need a surgery, right? You can't really buy
absolutely.
you out of the surgery, but I think it really comes down to the right treatment at the right time and the
Hmm.
right way. Tell me a little
Hmm.
bit about, it's been such a shitty couple years. I mean, there's no doubt about it. What trends have you been seeing do you see primarily women or women and men?
I work mostly with women.
Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what trends are you seeing with women during COVID around burnout, exhaustion, fatigue? Like what kind of themes are you seeing and
Yeah.
what are kind of the biggest like chief complaints right now?
So, Hannah, one of the biggest things that I love to teach is that so many of us, when we get on some kind of plan for feeling better, we're like, this is working. That's it. I found the solution. We just think we're going to stay on that forever. But that's not the case. And we need to update what we're doing to stay well. And when I talk about the three most important times to update, one of them is when your environment changes. So COVID's created this big change in environment. And two of the ways that I see it affecting our energy reserves and our potential for burnout the most are increased stress, right? Stress is like a big hole in the bottom of your gas tank where all your energy reserves are leaking out. And so, if women haven't updated and been really proactive about counteracting that increased stress, that's been a huge source of burnout. And the second is via the immune system.
Mm.
Right. So, whether it's your body reacting to the vaccines appropriately or getting COVID, if your immune system is really supported and regulated, you get over it quickly, your energy comes back, you don't have a lot of secondary issues or lingering symptoms, because when those do happen, that is quite a big drain on the energy reserves and can lead to burnout as well. So I would say,
Absolutely. I'm always curious though. There's so many bugs flying around now. It's monkeypox,
yeah,
always some rat
yeah,
or something we're gonna get. How do
yes.
we know if it's an immune response versus a reaction to a vaccine or a common cold? Like, what are we looking for as women to say, something's wrong. I need to get deeper support or more support?
Right. Well, your immune system protects you. And the idea is to keep your immune energy really, really replenished,
Mhm.
but not working when it shouldn't be, right? So much happens when we have an immune system that is turning on and doing stuff when it should be resting, whether it's any kind of autoimmune situation, whether it's any kind of chronic inflammation in our body, whether it's any kind of allergy, chronic low grade infections. All of these are drains on the immune system, so that every time something happens, we tend to have a reaction to it that is more than it needs to be, longer than it needs to be. So when you get sick, your immune response should be like intense and
Mhm.
over quickly, and you should be fully recovered.
Mhm.
And then you should be in this like resting state in between where you're not always half sick or not feeling quite right since the last one, or always feel like you're fighting something off.
Yes. I've heard of people, especially women, recently say to me,
Mhm.
I just got over COVID, but now I have a sinus infection. And then now I
Right.
have I'm having, issues with my periods. It just seems like one
Right.
thing and it kind of throws everything out of whack. What
Yes.
happens in our body from, an intrinsic level when we are burned out? What are the effects that we're looking for, we're feeling, we're seeing, or maybe something like, is that something? Is it not? Like, what are we looking for?
I tell people this is what being burned out feels like. You've got your day planned, you're going through it, and then something unexpected and extra comes at you. It could be anything. Your kid gets in a fight at school, an unexpected challenge at work, a broken garbage disposal, it doesn't matter. And your reaction is either panic or I want to get in bed, pull the covers over my head, and not have to deal with this today.
Mhm.
That's what burnout feels like. If your energy reserves are replenished, then when something comes at you, you're like, okay, I can think of 3 creative ways to solve this problem. I can see clearly that that's the best one. And let's get started on the solution by doing this first and this second. And then you take action, right? So that's when your energy reserves are replenished. And you can do that 20 times a day. You have this sort of endless stamina. So that's
Absolutely. I love the
big picture.
description that you said around, there's days and months, especially for those of us in COVID, that, we've got this, we have a vaccine now, everything's good.
Right.
I'm over COVID, I've had it or I haven't. And then it's like something does break down. Or it's always
Right.
like there was the garbage disposal that my husband forgot to pick up the kid at school. Then I have this, we have a date, babysitter
Yes.
canceled. It's always like the last straw. When a
Right.
client comes to you who's suffering and they're just like, I have nothing left to give. I am
Yeah.
at my breaking point. I'm literally going to go check myself into a mental health facility. What's
Hmm.
the first thing you address? So I'm walking into your office, Dana, and I'm like, Dana, I'm yours. Help me.
Okay. So my goal is to build up the energy reserves. I see your energy sort of like a candle, right? The wax, that's your reserves. The flame, that's the energy you use for everyday activities,
Mm.
right? Breathing, digestion, exercise. The light, that is your spirit, your wisdom, your patience, your compassion, right? That you're shining out into the world. So people come and say, I've got no light, I've got
Yeah.
no
Mark.
energy for everyday activities. But the problem is that the candle wax is all melted down in a puddle, right? You're not going to get a good light or a good flame without replenishing those reserves. So that's my goal. But there's 2 things to evaluate. Number one is, where is the energy leaking out and how big are the leaks?
Mm.
Okay. And because for some women, the energy leaks are so large and ongoing, we focus on fixing those first. Because I see women who are doing so much to feel better, but it's like they're trying to fill this bucket that has a big hole in the bottom, and you can waste so much time and energy and money. So we evaluate, how much do we need to work on fixing leaks versus focusing on replenishing actively and quickly and efficiently replenishing those reserves. And it's a balancing act between those two. Over time, it's less leaks and more replenishing. For some women, we start with the replenishing because they don't have the leaks. So
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah.
So what process do you go to repair that energy cycle? So we know that there's a first and then a second step. But what actually happens in your office or with the Zoom? If I were to hire you, what are you actually doing with me? I say, I have leaks everywhere. I need a new
Right.
bucket. What do you do?
Right. Right. Okay. So for the energy leaks, we look at what it is because it can
Mhm.
be a number of different things. And then we just go about sealing it up. So a
Mhm.
common one, for instance, is stress, right? We talked about that. And yes, deep breathing and meditation are great, but we also address this with natural remedies.
Mhm.
And for stress, we use ones that are relaxing, that change the energetic sort of tightness, that you get with stress, combined with other ones that actually they're adaptogenic and they actually help your body re-regulate. Your stress response gets on this hair trigger
Mhm.
where it's just spiking stress, spiking stress. So we actually help your body calm that down big picture.
Yeah.
And so we work on that while we start to replenish the reserves.
Okay.
And then, or we'll look for other, huge energy leaks if it's like a major immune issue or something like that.
What do you say to people that say, I have a doctor, I have a therapist, why would I need you?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are some really common statistics out there about the percentage of OBGYNs who say they are not trained in menopause. It's either
Yeah.
75 or 80%. And the number of primary care physicians who are not comfortable talking to women about menopause symptoms is also above 70%.
Wow, that's pretty high.
Um, and the number, yeah, and the number of women who go to their doctor with hormonal symptoms, and even the doctor, they don't realize it's hormonal. They just think, I have heart palpitations, or I have insomnia, or I have migraines, right? And they go to the doctor, and the doctor doesn't recognize it as hormonal. Oprah tells a story about having heart palpitations for over a year, wearing a Holter monitor, getting all this testing done, going to multiple doctors. None of them recognized that it was simply a menopausal symptom.
Wow, that's kind of scary, but not
Yeah.
surprising, I think, with the medical system in general. And, working in the healthcare industry for the last 20 years, seeing all these chief
Yeah.
complaints and the doctor only having 20 minutes to take
Yeah.
care of a laundry list of issues.
Right.
I'm curious, I've heard mixed reviews and mixed research on when can you get menopause? So I'm like 43 now. I'm
Yeah.
like counting down the days, waiting for my hot flash to happen. Like, how
Right.
soon can you get it? And it's not something happens to you. You catch menopause, but how soon
Right.
can it appear in your life? And then what do you start to do? Like, where do you go from here?
Yeah. So I think of menopause as this transition that starts when your hormone levels first start to drop. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're most fertile, like it's the easiest to get pregnant when you're 23, right? Your hormones are at their highest. And then at some point after menopause, it's been like a year and a half, 2 years since your last period, right? Your hormones stop changing and they settle out at these postmenopausal levels. The whole time that they're changing, I see that as the menopausal transition. And the trick is to not let any of the hormones fall too low
Mm-hmm.
or get really out of balance with each other while they're changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so some women, it starts at, 25, 28, almost everyone. If you go to the doctor at 35, they'll say it's a little harder to get pregnant than 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
38, right? That's because your hormones are already dropping. You won't have any symptoms until you're a little bit farther along. And you could have like any changes in your cycle, right? It gets shorter, it gets longer, the bleeding is different, PMS is different, you're more sensitive to stress, you get a
Yeah.
little hot at night, so anything like that. And what I like to do is start early. To
Mm,
start early. It's sort of like, fill up the gas tank before you go on this
right,
long drive. You
right.
don't want them to start really dropping already when you're already burned
You
out.
don't want to get stuck in a ditch either on the side of the road.
Yeah. You don't
Yeah,
want to fall off the
yeah,
side of the cliff.
right.
Exactly. So I'm like, give your body what it needs to
Mhm.
get those healthy habits in place to kind of seal the leaks and proactively, right? Like proactively
Mhm.
replenish reserves so that no matter what happens, whether it's COVID or menopause or whatever, nothing bottoms out as
Wow.
the changes start to take place. So that's sort of preventative. Get on some basic support, top off progesterone. That's usually the first one to start to drop. And then when you reach a point where either you get some hot flashes or you stop getting your period, right?
Mhm.
If your hormones are really balanced and they're not too low, you might not have a lot of symptoms, but eventually your period will stop. You're kind of reaching that point where you want to transition your remedies, not just into harmonizing the cycle and supporting progesterone, but really looking at progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. You want all those hormones to remain as high as possible after menopause,
Mhm.
because that will greatly, change your experience of aging.
Yeah, I love that analogy of the gas tank and preventative and looking
Yes.
early before. Let's
Yeah.
talk about, I didn't ask you this before, but let's talk about
Mm-hmm.
IUDs. So I'm thinking in women in their 20s, when you're in high school and you're going to college or whenever you become sexually active, you've
Yeah.
got a couple choices for birth control. A
Yeah.
lot of women now these days are choosing IUDs, right? And it's
Yeah.
the 3 or 5 year, whatever it is, the three or
Yeah.
5 year plan. And then you get it out, right? For some reason
Right.
or another. What happens to your body when that is out or removed and you choose not to put something like that back in? Are you
Right.
working with women around kind of course correcting, like, oh my gosh, I haven't
Yeah.
had my period in 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, what should I be looking for? And the education
Yeah.
around that, I'm just curious. A lot of our listeners are like, my husband's gotten or my partner has gotten a vasectomy. I don't need my
Right,
IUD in anymore. Now what? But then they're
right,
experiencing exhaustion, fatigue, and let's call it what
right,
it is, weight gain, right? Nobody
right,
likes to talk
right,
about it. Let's
right.
talk about that.
Yeah. And it's similar to going off birth control pills as well, right? So ideally, if you're in a place your hormones are still high enough that for you at that age you would be having your period, in an ideal situation, you'll take it out, and within a month, you'll get a period. And after just a little bit of, it'll get regular. It'll happen once a month. It'll just be like a little, just feel really robust and normal and smoothly transitioning from one phase to the next. But the hormone levels need to do these changes for each phase of the cycle to happen, and they're lazy. They haven't been doing it. You're a little bit older. So the cycle tends to become a little sort of sticky as we get into perimenopause anyway. The body has more trouble going from one phase to the next phase easily. And that's where you get that like PMS and more migraines and spotting and, mood changes. And so with something like that, what I will do if a woman's body is really having trouble getting back into the cycle, there's one type of formula that just harmonizes the cycle as a whole. Sometimes that's enough. Like, is anything depleted? And just getting the whole thing moving. But then you can actually go in with remedies and say, okay, we're going to tell your body this is how you do it. Remember this? Here's what you do for a week. And then here's what you do for a week. And then here's what you do for a week. And then here's what you do for a week. And the other thing that helps the cycle is completely shedding the uterine lining. We haven't done that in a while, and that clears the way for things to happen better the next month. So if you're not having too much bleeding or you're not depleted, you want to make sure that you really encourage the body with detox and estrogen detox and shedding the uterine lining and then rebuilding, right? Rebuilding the blood and then moving. It's like that spark, moving and then letting it go. So we just kind of remind it how it goes and if your reserves are really replenished and your energy is moving well,
Yes.
that's when your body is going to bounce back into a normal cycle.
Yes.
It's like it's just like COVID, or menopause. You want to be replenished and ready for anything.
Absolutely. I have a
Yeah.
lot of women that come to me and just talk in general around, when you're burned out and you're depleted,
Yeah.
you don't have anything left for yourself,
Right.
let alone your partner. And so around
Right.
intimacy, sex,
Yes.
and just connection, talk to us
Yes.
a little bit about, vaginal dryness or,
Yeah.
not feeling great, right? Emotionally, physically, and sexually. What
Yeah.
can working with you kind of re-energize and get that spark back, not only with yourself, but also with your intimate partner? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So in Chinese medicine, where my work is based, your hormones are like your energy reserves. And you actually have a watery yin energy reserve and a fiery yang energy reserves that together make up your energy reserves. And the yin ones are like your estrogen and your progesterone and your secretions and fluids, right? And then your fiery ones are more like your testosterone, and that's more your libido,
Yes.
right? And your ability to have a complete orgasm too, right? You need both. But the dryness comes in more when that watery essence is depleted, because that's like this reservoir of moisturizing fluids that the body uses for everything. And it's what plumps and moistens the vaginal tissues from the inside out and keeps them resilient and thicker, right? And so just replenishing those watery energy reserves. Like, I've worked with a lot of women who have even gone past that to the point of vaginal atrophy and
Okay.
recurrent UTIs.
I thought
And
you were
it's
going to say flooding.
amazing. No, this is like after that. But the flooding depletes the water, right? Blood is a kind of yin, right?
Yes.
So you get to this point where you have that vaginal dryness and it can really progress quite far. And even then you can see it come back. Topical moisturizers just are good. Even topical hormones we use, like suppositories, DHEA, whatever. But if you plump the tissues from the inside out, I call it, by replenishing those watery reserves, which is like estrogen and progesterone, but it's a little bit more than that. it really can help. And then the fiery reserves is more the libido. And also, it's just, you're not going to feel real excited if you're running on empty. You need to
Mhm.
have that little bit of extra, I think.
Yeah.
So,
I think for yourself individually, right? And then also to be a better partner and to be a more
yes,
holistic partner. Uh, I have a lot of
yes,
women who
definitely.
are,
And yeah,
yeah. I have a lot of women who are
who,
moms, right? And moms,
yeah,
especially after pregnancy, and kind of getting,
yeah,
their body becomes not their own, frankly. It's attached
yes,
to a child and trying to keep that child nourished and alive. What advice
yes.
do you have for moms that are just like postpartum,
Yeah,
post having a baby?
yeah.
What advice would you say around what's the best thing that you can do to replenish yourself so you can replenish your family?
Yeah. So in Chinese medicine, there's this tradition where when you have a baby, you lie in bed for 30 days afterwards, and your family and everyone comes and does all the cooking, all the cleaning, takes care
Wow.
of your other children, just hands you the baby to nurse, and feeds you nourishing soups and herbs to proactively replenish what you just gave away. Right.
Wow.
So you give away something very deep
Mm.
when you have a baby. And so often we are so busy right afterwards. And so I see it sometimes, not always with the first child, but we never fully replenish after the first one. And then it could be the second one or the third one, or just like all of a sudden, after one of them, we hit a bottom point and we have postpartum depression, or we are exhausted, or we don't have any more patience, or whatever. And so my advice would be, know that every time you give birth, even if you're young and you feel great, to put some time proactively replenishing your body. Check
Mm.
your iron, make sure you're not at all, depleted, deficient. In Chinese medicine, there's like formulas just for that, so take them for 90 days, for 90 days, specifically rest as much as you can when you're tired, let people help you. But so often that's impossible. And
Right.
that's why I love the herbal remedies, because it can kind of make up for the extra drains that we have
Mhm.
by pouring stuff into the bucket that wouldn't
Absolutely.
get there nearly that fast otherwise.
Yeah. That's great
Yeah,
advice. I think for, we have a lot of moms listening to the podcast and just in general, part of the She Shatter community. And I think that's the biggest
yeah,
piece is after they return from, maternity leave or then
yeah,
paternity leave and they're coming back to work, it's like they have
yes,
nothing left. They have nothing in that gas tank. And they're like, so I'm expected to work a full-time job and then go home and do
right,
XYZ. So I think
yes.
that's really kind of tactical advice. Thank you.
And
Talk,
you can, even during the pregnancy, right? You can support yourself with herbal remedies during the pregnancy and like have them right on the shelf. So you're just like, it's this continuous thing
I need to,
proactively, yeah.
yeah.
Because if you're replenished by the time you go back to work, you'll be psyched for some new challenges. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the real question that everyone wants to know. Okay, we've
Yeah.
heard herbs, they're great. You hear Chinese medicine. I
Mhm.
myself have taken the drinks, taken the supplements, taken all these different things.
Uh-huh.
They don't taste and feel great sometimes, right? It is kind
Uh-huh.
of that getting used to it process. Talk to me
Yep.
a little bit about options. You mentioned that there's suppositories and creams.
Right.
A smoothie we'll talk about in a second.
Right.
You've talked a lot about options, but if it's someone that isn't great with pills or isn't great
Right.
with kind of regimens, and 90 days seems like a long time, what
Yeah.
thoughts or advice do you have around that?
Yeah. So this is such a great question because, you get into this and you're like, oh, I need to know the strategy and
Right.
the right herbs to pick for someone and the diagnosis. But sometimes the thing that keeps a woman from getting results is that she just doesn't like taking her herbs. So she doesn't take them
Right.
regularly enough,
Right.
like it could be she's not used to doing something every day, or she doesn't like the taste, or it's like that is so important. So when I work with women, I always try to have option that is a liquid tincture, a powder, and either a tablet or a capsule. Because some women are just like, give me some pills to swallow. I don't mind. It's no problem. That's easy. But for instance, I don't like to swallow pills.
Mhm.
So the tinctures and the powders can be put into any kind of tea if you're a tea drinker. They can be put into juice. You want to avoid citrus juices because they can interfere with absorption. Grape juice works really well at hiding the flavor. And what I recommend is a shot glass. Don't make it anything big. Put it in a shot glass, mix it all in there, and just look.
Yeah.
Also, you can put it in something like applesauce or chocolate pudding. And
Sounds
also,
good.
I love to make smoothies, though you'll taste it a little bit. Or like I call it an herbal latte. It just depends if you like the tastier herbs or not. But I'll make it like a hot chocolate kind of, and put some nice healthy fats in there. Or like oat milk, it's creamy. I can put some gelatin powder in there. It's so rich and creamy and delicious, and I love it. But there's plenty of ways to hide the taste too if you don't like it. And none of them are better or worse. They all work, but it's what fits into your schedule. What are you going to do regularly? And what either you enjoy or you don't dislike.
Mhm. I love the idea of a latte or a smoothie. So for me, in the
Yeah.
morning, I have a coffee. Wouldn't it
Yep.
be great if I could add something to my routine to make it
Yeah.
less stressful versus actually create a whole new routine? And for our
Exactly.
listeners, can you talk a little bit about on your website? It talks a little bit about a hormonal smoothie. Now that sounds
Yeah.
interesting. Tell me
Yeah.
what's actually in it and what we can expect after we drink this hormonal milkshake.
Sure. So what I like to do with smoothies is use it as a place to talk about what are the basic building blocks you want in your diet that your hormones need the most when you start to get into menopause, right? To help your body keep making hormones so none of them drop too low, and to keep your body processing and detoxing hormones well also. And so the thing about a smoothie, it can be an easy way to get all those building blocks every day. It's
Mhm.
like one and done,
Yep.
And so what I like to do is take any smoothie and I'm like, okay, does it have 1, 2, 3, 4? Right. And if not, you can add something. So basically, you want some vegetables in there because vegetables and also fruits are cooling, anti-inflammatory, alkalinizing, and they have the fiber that keeps your colon and your bowel movements really healthy. So that keeps estrogen detox going and it helps your liver. So like if you don't have a big enough percentage of those cooling plant foods in your diet, it's really hard to avoid hot flashes, right? So it's an easy way to get a bunch of extra servings. And I have so many options. You can do lettuce, you can do spinach, you can do like kale, but you can also do like cooked vegetables. You can do zucchini or cauliflower or things you won't even taste if you need
Yeah.
to, that you won't even know are there. Doesn't have to be green. So the vegetables and the fruits are great, but we become more sensitive to sugar. So you want to be careful of too much like bananas,
Mhm.
so some fruits and berries and all that, but the vegetables are the one we usually maybe don't get enough servings of.
Awesome.
Then healthy fats. Okay, hormones are made of fats. So if we're not getting enough healthy fats, it's really hard for our body to make enough fats. Plus, they help with sweet cravings. Low fat diet is not necessarily the way you want to go. So you can
Right.
find a healthy fat that works for you, whether it's avocado or coconut oil or nut butter, but put some healthy fats in there. And so you've got your vegetables, you've got your healthy fats. And then I like to include some superfoods because there are foods that are so concentrated in hormone specific building blocks that, in 2 tablespoons of flax seeds, you
Mm.
get more lignans than in 25 cups of lentils or something you would never, never,
Oh,
never,
wow.
ever eat. So if
Okay.
you look at really hormonal specific superfoods, it's also a really easy way to throw those in.
Okay. Great.
And
What about
so,
hemp powder? I see that everywhere
yeah,
in New Zealand. Is that a good?
yeah. So in Chinese medicine, any kind of seeds are
Mm.
good for your energy reserves. But and hemp is also a really good source of protein, which that's the other thing is protein. We tend to need actually kind of more protein. So whether you're getting it from hemp seeds or just some good protein powder, sometimes we don't get enough protein or we don't get it like early enough in the day or something. So smoothies are also a great way to make sure you're getting your protein. So hemp is a great source of protein. It's a seed, so it's great for your energy reserves and your hormones, and it's a healthy fat. So there's a lot of benefits, but the specific superfood in some seeds that's so hormone specific is the lignans, which there's the
Mhm.
most in flax seeds and the second most in sesame seeds.
Talk to me a little bit about acupuncture. I know we talked a little bit
Mm-hmm.
about diet, right? And I think you're an acupuncturist as well.
Yeah.
What advice would you give with for women specifically around burnout for acupuncture? Is that something that's
Yeah.
recommended? And if so, what area of the body are you targeting, right? Because
Yeah.
you've got all of your different chi in your body. So what would you actually be targeting if that someone were to have you for a section for acupuncture? What would that look like?
Yeah. So one of the things that I like to work on, it's like this two-part system. You've got to give your body the raw materials, the energy reserves, the hormones to work with. But then your body needs to micromanage your hormone levels, right? Oh, we got a little too much of this one. We got a little too much of that one. So it's like constant micromanaging. And so that is your body's, it does the same thing with your immune system, right? We talked about it, turning on at the right time, turning off at the right time. So there are things you can do with acupuncture that help your body to regulate hormones better. Acupuncture is wonderful for relieving stress and re-regulating the stress response. Acupuncture is wonderful for, there's a lot of acupuncture points for replenishing hormones and energy reserves, but I will say I think it's better for helping the body manage hormone levels, for symptom relief, like, maybe from hot flashes or insomnia, and for stress management. And if you're really trying to just bring up the reserves and the hormones,
Mhm.
herbs work better for that.
That's great. That's
So,
helpful. Yeah, I
yeah.
was just curious between the juxtaposition between the two, and I think
Mm-hmm.
a
Yeah.
lot of our women through She Shudders they're trying to combat burnout from a mental
Mm-hmm.
standpoint, but then their
Mm-hmm.
bodies are still so depleted, and that's why I love
Right.
this episode with you to talk a little bit about what can we actually do. We've all heard meditation, mindfulness, eat healthy,
Right.
but what are actual tips and tricks that we can incorporate into our lives? Which I love, the herb piece that we're talking about today, the
Yeah.
smoothies. But I think sometimes it goes beyond, those energy levels. And my experience
Yeah.
with acupuncture has been fabulous. But
Yeah.
I'm just curious for those people that are like, I've heard of acupuncture, does it really work? There's a
Yeah.
lot of naysayers around Chinese medicine, but my experience and your experience obviously has been that it has been helpful. It has worked. And I think
Yeah.
you need Western medicine too. I think you need
Yeah.
kind of all the combinations because
Absolutely.
for our listeners on the line, I mean, Dana cannot basically give you herbs without knowing what deficiencies are out there. You got to
Yeah.
check labs to her point earlier. You got to figure out how to replenish those. And so I think you're using both Western and Eastern medicine, which I think is so helpful. As far as, our audience and finding you, what's
Yeah.
the best way for them to connect with you or reach out to you if they have any questions or
Mm-hmm.
resources? What's the best way that our team can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website, danalavoielac.com, is a great place to get in touch. There is a free menopause resources page there, right in the menu, and you can get my smoothie guide there. And there's some other stuff on there too, like making smoothies weight loss friendly from a Chinese medicine perspective, which is not something people have heard before. So, and then when you get the smoothie guide, I'll send you some. You just get in touch with me. If I know what you're looking for help with, I can send you some blog posts, some customized information, and an invitation to an upcoming, free workshop that I teach online periodically. So that's probably the best way to get started.
Thank you so much. I really
Yeah.
wanted to have you on season 3 of Women Game Changers because I believe that we cannot just treat burnout with self care, right? We need to do the
Yeah.
work from the inside out, and that includes hormones. It includes attacking menopause and figuring out proactively what we can do to burn bright and not burn out. So, thank you so much, my friend,
Yes.
for being on the show today. And we look forward to our audience connecting with you and all these fabulous
Yes.
resources.
Yes. I love to answer questions. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a good day.